You want to hear a rotten hippie story? You can't use this in your movie. It's like a universal theme. People think they're going to plan their lives, and this is what... I mean, how's that going to work? How do you know what's enough until you find out what's too much?
For good the ship rides through the morning when the darkness down low.
U.S. Highway number 1, if you travel south, heads like a concrete arrow for a dead end here in Key West.
It's one of the liveliest dead ends you can imagine. Blacks and whites, Cubans and Anglos. The soft speech of the American South, blending with Spanish with a Havana accent. It's all part of life on an American island, unlike any place on the mainland.
Key West is rich and odd, interesting and diverse. Since cities and islands owe their present to their past, we can give thanks for this little key's compelling present to the pirates and the writers, the wreckers and the artists, the refugees and the runaways who populated it in the years that are gone. We'll be back in just a minute.
It was just dumb luck, really, in a way. I've always wanted to be a writer. Don't ask me where I came up with it, but I was in some ways, such an unsuccessful kid. I was always in trouble, and I think I imagined this overarching success that would conceal all my failures and give me time to fish. So I wanted to be a writer long before I wanted to do any writing or do any work of any kind. I met Jim Harrison in college. I mean, we were two guys from Michigan, you know, didn't really know jack shit, you know, but we each thought the other guy was a big deal.
Well, you know, you have to picture him. He's got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth like this. He's blind in one eye. None of his teeth fit. He just doesn't give a shit. I mean, he's just kind of so comfortable in his own shoes, you just don't know what he's going to say next.
McGuane is one of the generation's great writers. As a young writer, I would read, and I've told Tom this story, and I would stop and I would read just one of his sentences, and I'd say to myself, I could write till I'm 100 years old. I'm never going to be able to write that sentence. And there's no duplicating it or imitating it.
I was so influenced by reading Tom and Jim, and they wrote in a way that few people could convey that. Though there were different writing styles to me, they were the best at it.
I really thought of Jim as my first reader, you know. There's no doubt that I wanted him to admire what I was doing.
Well, they had the same birthday, too. So it even turned into, you know, when Garrison Keillor would announce birthdays on NPR, it was always Jim and Tom, Jim and Tom, Jim and Tom.
There was always kind of this incredible great friendship, but also a competitiveness.
He was working on a movie. He didn't have a title for it, so he snatched the title off my desk. Legends of the Fall.
There was some one-upsmanship, too. I mean, there was an incredible competition going there, whether or not they wanted... I mean, I know they kept an eye on that with each other, and one of the funniest things, I think, was when Jimmy hit the bestseller list. He just...
And then later, yeah, it kind of took him by surprise. Yeah.
Good morning, folks. I'd like to say I'm certainly glad to have you aboard the Conqueror train this morning. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome you to Key West, Florida, the southernmost city in the continental limit, United States.
Well, you know, Key West was a magical combination of things. It was a place where you could live cheaply. It really hadn't been discovered. It was a literary town. We'd had Ernest Hemingway, Elizabeth Bishop, Tennessee Williams was living there, Jamie Kirkwood was living there, Truman Capote was there off and on.
They were fishing and fucking around, and everybody in the town was, and it was like, it was a bohemian thing. It was a Navy town, a gay town, a hippie town, a drug town. But Key West historically had always been that. We weren't the first ones there that took advantage of the laissez-faire attitude. But you went there because you could do it.
As soon as I had some writing money, I went down there. It was 1969, yeah. The prime time really was when it was just Guy and I down there. And we were just there as serious fishermen.
I must have been down there in 1970, and the first person I met was Tom McGuane.
I met Tom and Guy and Harrison in Key West, because they had all run away from their wives and homes and things like that. And that was their excuse to go to Key West to fish. And then Brautigan came in San Francisco. He was the king of the hippies. Trout fishing in America had just come out. And he was out there.
Brautigan was so famous that the Beatles flew in just to see him. All those guys were my fishing friends. And Jimmy Buffett. Back then, you got to understand, he has no career, he has nothing. He's got this car that if he hadn't taken it out of Nashville would probably have been impounded up there. And he was very serious about what he was doing in his own way. I mean, yeah, he was playing for beer. I couldn't get him to tune the guitar, you know.
Tom at that time was and still is a very serious writer, and it was kind of wild down there, but...
They were just a non-stop vacay, you know, and I was trying to have a normal life. My kid was going to school, my wife was teaching school, I was trying to write a book and stuff like that, and they'd be partying away.
Having all that collection of talent in Key West, that was the equivalent of the round table at the Algonquin. McGuane is down there, and Harrison, and Guy, and Jimmy, of course. I mean, it quickly became legendary.
Back 1920s, 1930s, the famous world traveler, big game hunter, and writer of novels, Ernest Hemingway spent quite a bit of time here in Key West. He also purchased his first home and is open daily, 9 to 5. Now my right moment back up on the rubber tree.
These are obviously older. Restoration. They're full of rust. So restoring a film like this with such damaged reels is really quite delicate. We got this pretty cool little poster. Yeah. My dad was a cinematographer during the French New Wave Cinema Verite and had worked with pretty great directors in France. So he had this very clear vision of what this little time in Key West and with these writers, how he wanted to show it. And they were very like anti-establishment at the time, so they kind of pushed it away and didn't want to be filmed that much.
You know, we weren't interested in his making a movie at the time, you know.
Jim and Tom, they were like creative and certainly like doers, not just, you know, hippies that had lost their way. So he definitely wanted to capture the creative energy of those writers as it pertained to Key West.
I had this minor bone to pick with Daniel about whether or not we were all, or any of us were on the cutting edge, you know, in an art sense, or whether or not we were just back from the edge of the blade, you know.
The only thing I don't like about history is it doesn't deal with the future.
And the film ended up being tipped a bit more on the fishing side than on the writer's side. He would have preferred it to be a bit more balanced.
It was difficult some days. We would go to sleep in the boat at 10 o'clock in the morning, and people would drive by and, you know, peer inside, and we'd go like that, you know. And, you know, it was fun.
Tell Tell me about the fish.
Massively lyrical. A very powerful lyrical thing. Extraordinary.
Right.
So extraordinary as to create immediate unreality upon contact with the fish.
I don't see how you could design anything or wish for anything more than a tarpon. I mean, it's a shallow water, deep water, light tackle, heavy tackle. I mean, they do everything. I'm not a good authority because I haven't fished that many places, but I think a tarpon is just the best.
Because they just swim by.
To give you an idea what the brackets were like, I took Jim fishing early on. He caught a tarpon. Then the party scene set in. Jim fished for tarpon for 14 more years and never caught another fish.
That was terrible. You said that we go through life with a diminishing portfolio of enthusiasms. So you try to seek out in life moments that give you this immense jolt of electricity. It's a tranquilizer better than any chemical tranquilizer. So you try to have something that gives you this electricity and freshens up your feeling about being alive.
Flats are, they're kind of trippy when you get out there. I had never seen them that way. I was always drunk at a party on ballast skis. Seeing the way they fished for tarpon was magnificent.
Yeah. Oh. Almost.
It all happened so suddenly, and it was all kind of made up as we went along.
I actually don't remember how he got that kind of footage.
Fly lines in the tip top.
They built a platform out on the flats and would be out there hours at a time, just my dad and the sound man. And they did put a condom around the mic to put it underwater.
Buffett did the soundtrack.
They asked me to do the tarpon, and they said, we can't pay you. We're going to edit in France. You can come stay with us in France, and we'll do the movie together. I said, sure. Well, we cut it in a day when it got down to it.
Very quick.
Well, it was the history of that thing is so strange. I mean, it was in Guy's basement for a quarter century or something before it got fished back out again.
Guy was kind of his sense of business was nil.
Well, I can't remember. I know that we tried very hard to sell it.
It didn't do very well. I think there were some issues trying to get it released in the States.
You couldn't find a distributor for it, I don't think.
I don't think it ever got shown.
I don't know, but it's basically had a cult following. Somebody must have bootlegged it.
And then I saw it, and I was just blown away because it was about way more than tarpon.
I'm holding her up and the fish.
But he still had some of the greatest tarpon footage I think that's ever been shot.
Hemingway said a thing about material possession, which I think is a beautiful thing. He said, you never really own anything until you can give it away.
Exactly.
And the ultimate keeping of the tarpon would be the releasing it.
There was smugglers, and there was, sort of dangerous elements in Key West, and fishermen and nature lovers and bohemians and hippies. So it was a perfect place to explore these like outer limits of like human possibility.
We used a lot of drugs. You know, every night we'd get pretty well whacked out. They drank and did the cocaine and did the marijuana and all sorts of good stuff.
So it was rumored that the film was partially funded by some drug smuggling endeavors.
Let's just say there were a lot of people in the trade there.
They're all writing, they're all being productive, they're still partying like hell, but it's, you know, things did change, and they changed pretty quickly.
Tarpon never eat plantains. They never eat beans. They never listen to music.
We may have gone crazy, you know, from time to time. I don't think we were thoughtless or dangerous or even really that dangerous to ourselves.
He was a wild one. I don't quite think it's accurate that everyone else corrupted Dad.
Somebody tuned me into the fact that he'd been living this very stoic life as a serious writer. I went, really?
The worm turned eventually, and I learned to have as much fun as they did.
Man, this guy's fucking wild.
Smoking a lot of pot, and that was about it.
We had a pile of cocaine that was on the table every night.
I think we're doing pretty well, you know.
There was a woman almost shot my head off.
Can't remember why.
That got dark.
If your father asked you to hide the cocaine, you hid the cocaine.
Who goes tarpon fishing on acid, for God's sake?
There were hallucinogens.
Quaaludes were around.
Beautiful women.
Marriages started to break up.
This probably isn't for your podcast, but Jimmy and I were really taking a lot of nourishment from the town and the activities of the town and the crazy stuff that's going on. I had a little house on Ann Street, and right across was the Nautical Wheelers square dancing place, you know. I just would see it. It didn't mean anything to me. And then Jimmy wrote this great song about it.
Jimmy was getting more famous. Jim Harrison was getting more famous. And Tom McGuane was getting super famous.
92 when The Shade came out, I was still in my 20s, and I made several movies back to back. It was on the front page of the New York Times. Time magazine, Life magazine came down to profile me. I was totally embarrassed.
There's a good chance somebody might get killed.
92 in The Shade. On Rancho Deep.
The Missouri breaks.
Steve McQueen is Tom Horn, who became a legend.
Hollywood came to town, and it didn't seem fun anymore. It was kind of getting dark.
We started to get a kind of a New York element of New York hipsters. It was kind of a heroin scene. People were, you know, starting to disappear. The fire chief got dropped off in a garbage bag in the Everglades. He was a drug dealer.
We were having the time of our life in the town of our life. Time takes its toll sometimes, or else things change. I didn't want to be a headline on a newspaper that my mother had to read.
And perhaps maybe for them living in the moment, they didn't realize that what they had was quite unique and was going to disappear quite quickly.
What happens, for example, if in 6 or 7 years from now, you or I or Paige or anybody here has to work, say, for 3 or 4 days before they can get their customers to jump 2 or 3 fish? In other words, is there anything physical that are scaring the fish off the flats?
I think it's just motorboat pressure.
There is no question that the traffic is going to have some great impact on these fish.
I think we're seeing the end of it.
Well, there are probably 60 or 70 bonefish skiffs in Key West right now, guide skiffs. I had the only one. I had the only skiff in the whole place. To fish just because you just love to do it. We were all opposed to tournaments. They're the biggest deal now.
The tourism was so bad that I just said, I can't do this anymore.
By the time I left in 1978, it was not a pleasant atmosphere. Everything that was opulent and beautiful about Key West suddenly was tropical and creepy. I really remember that, where you could look at familiar buildings and just think, oof, I gotta get out of here.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. Watch your step as you step off the train. Please make sure you have all your personal belongings, pocketbooks, binoculars, cameras, other items, like all your children. Got enough of my own. Thank you, folks. Watch your step. Have a nice day.
This is her world completely.
And that's Benji, his first cutting horse.
Benji Stripe.
That's Benji Stripe, right there.
She's a great horse. Let me see that.
Right there. She's buried out there.
Yeah, that was really a good horse. She didn't have a straight leg on her body, though. She just...
Tom and Tom Brokaw.
I haven't seen this one so long. Hey, here's Brautigan. Memory's kind of suppressed all these years. Oh.
But in there,
I hate old pictures.
he hates them and I love
Do you?
them.
I hate them.
Yeah, but I'm going to show you the.
What do you not like about them?
They suck.
What is he saying? He's not nostalgic. See, when I saw that picture, all I can do is think about that horse now.
Yeah, I am not nostalgic. That's true.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet?
In a bar.
In a bar.
I was on the floor.
He was.
You've been in bars before, haven't you?
So I was in Key West. I was having a great time. And we went to this place called the Chart Room. I turned around, there's this guy on the floor of the bar. He couldn't get up, I don't think. But anyway, somehow I was introduced and he said, "Oh my God, you're Jimmy's sister." And I said, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." And then we met and that's when he said, "Will you marry me and take me to your southern mansions?" And I said, "I don't have a southern mansion, but maybe one day."
You know, certainly when Tom met Laurie, she had a great deal to do with him not going down that slippery slope.
I had a little window there, which I'm sure I was really flirting with alcoholism. I mean, I ended up in jail, and Laurie called me up and said, "Son, you need to get the plug in the jug. If you don't, I won't bail you out."
No, it was wild as hell.
A lot of their friends didn't make it into the 80s.
All these guys were so gifted. I mean, are so gifted that, and it keeps you going, but there's a lot of gifted people that don't make it either. They crash and burn. And I think that the key is just to know when to start tapping the brakes a little bit.
Careers in the arts is they have a great capacity for tragedy, as is well known, because it's an all or nothing commitment. Richard Brautigan came up to my house and he brought his fishing rods and he gave me this black Japanese urn. And he said, "Someone will call you for the urn." And the next year, I guess it was, I get a call for the urn. Richard had just committed suicide and they wanted the urn for his ashes, so I mailed it back to him.
You see how far you go, and then, you made a decision. Is your art more important than, being fucked up all the time? And I think the survivors knew how to balance it.
Okay, we're going to do a song entitled Nautical Wheelers, which was written about a square dance group here in Key West. Nautical wheelers who call themselves sailors play fiddle tunes under the stars and take home to Russell.
My brother-in-law, Buffett, I think Jimmy is penalized because he's so successful. And one of the reasons he's so successful, he's just like Laurie or their parents. They're hard workers. And, Jimmy had, some early successes. It looked like his career was over, and he said, "No, it's not." Then he just hit the road, and he has an enormous following. It's not unusual for him to get 30,000 people.
Jimmy certainly doesn't need to be on tour, but he lives for it. I never see him happier than when he's on stage and he's playing.
There weren't many people like that group of artists. These guys were out on the ocean and they were fishing. I mean, Tom's been compared to Hemingway a lot, but your local writers were not like these guys. And they're just different, and I don't think the new ones are. The new ones are in Brooklyn.
None of them would have been as prolific without one another. My dad and Uncle Jim and Uncle Jimmy and all those guys wanted to be free. They didn't want to be told, here's what you will do with your life, and then you can sit down and it's over.
It's like writing in a way. Life is improvisation. Now, I'd read this piece that Tennessee Williams wrote called The Catastrophe of Success. And it turns out that, you really want to strive, but you kind of don't want to get there, If you get there, then it's an illusion. You didn't get anywhere. It never changes, it's always the same struggle. But during that, sometimes you have these hot spots, and it's very important not to believe them.
Looking back on it now, I didn't know that it would turn into the country music business going to the beach. I was just writing what I knew about.
You want the tin cup chalice and sitting down by the beach getting high. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, it's a universal dream, and it's not just an American dream. But at the same time, we do also tend to stampede the last best places that we love so much.
After those dark periods at the time when everybody kind of went their own way, and we all still, I would say, remain very close friends. Every one of my friends who passed away, and still Tom and I and the people that are still left, we're still very close because of those days. But even just walking around Key West, I still believe in the place. And Harrison says, every place I've been, everybody says you should have been here 10 years ago. And I love that line because it's true.
Well, it was a whole lot better than what it is now. Because, are you taking this on record? Jesus.
That's the nature of things, you kind of have these congeries of people that get together for one reason or another, and then the astonishing thing about growing old is that people basically disperse, and you didn't know it at the time, of course. You just think life would always be that way. We're lucky to have had it happen, so. Most of us feel those were the best years of our lives.
It was great fun. That's probably why I was kind of weeping yesterday a little bit, because it was the memories of those days. It was 50 years ago, and it just affected me.
Losing people on a pretty regular basis now. I can't believe that I am this old, but I feel a lot younger.
When I look back on that crew, I really kind of miss them. There's no, they're irreplaceable. Jim and I are writing at least once a week, and sometimes 5 times a week to each other. This is letters, for 50 years. So there was a point at which we didn't know where one guy's brain ended and the other brain began.
Dad died sitting up. He died writing.
Pen was in his hand and the poem was half finished.
He was dead by the time he would have fallen out of his chair, and it was just that quick.
And so this kind of brain channel that I had is not there anymore. So, it's like waking up and talking to somebody who's not there. The other boot doesn't drop from heaven. I've made this path and nobody else, leading crookedly up through the pasture where I'll never reach the top of Antelope Butte. It is here where my mind begins to learn my heart's language, on this endless wobbly path, veering south and north, informed by my all too vivid dreams, a compass without a needle. Today the gods speak in drunk talk, pulling at a heart too old for this walk. A cold, windy day, kneeling at the mouth of the snake den where they killed 800 rattlers. Moving higher, my thumping chest
recites the names of a dozen friends who have died in recent years. Names now incomprehensible as the mountains across the river far behind me. I'll always be walking up toward Antelope Butte. Perhaps when we die, our names are taken from us by a divine magnet and are free to flutter here and there within the bodies of birds. I'll be a simple crow who can reach the top of Antelope Butte.
I mean, it was the friendship of a lifetime, you know. There's a thing that the French poet Mallarmé said one time. He said, at the point an artist dies, whatever his life was, whatever his work was, becomes one thing. There can be two things while he's alive. When they die, it's one thing.
Covered with a thick cloud of smoke. I wasn't thinking about anything sentimental about home. The sun set forever as the cool water rose. All I've taken for granted was the kindness you shown. Oh, I'm coming home. And it's a dark, dirty secret, you can't give it away. I try to be patient,